So I'm talking, and why aren't you hearing anything from my mic? He's doing it for the video machine over there. So there were a couple of comments last week that I appreciate those people that commented. A couple of things came up. One is that it was hard to hear me, and unfortunately, around the time I turned puberty, I got the voice that I have now. I've never smoked, so it's not from smoking. It's just, this is a voice, and I guess I'm still going through puberty. I don't know. But anyway, if you have trouble hearing me, please raise your hand or ask me to speak it up, you know, talk a little bit louder, because I'd like all of you to be able to hear. A couple of other comments came that the information was a little more basic than they wanted. Well, we're trying to reach all levels of experience here in terms of a job search. It was very apparent by some of the responses last week that, you know, there are a lot of people that have been around for a while where this is all new again, and they're going back to the basics. You know, how to use the internet, how do you use Facebook, how do you use social media. So we're trying to cover it all, and we're trying to make sure that you get a good solid basics, and we're also going to kick it up. The other thing I would like, it was tough last week. We had a lot of people. It was a little difficult to get you to engage. You can help me immensely if you'll respond when I have some questions for you. They're going to be simple. Things like, have you ever looked for a job? How are you looking for a job now? But I'd really like you to engage as much as you possibly can. With that, I'm going to do a quick review. Can you guys see that? Okay, can you see? The length of the average job hunt has increased. It used to be, at 2008, it used to be about 5 months. The only reason I'm telling you this is not to discourage you, but if you've been looking for a while, it's to encourage you to realize that if you're not finding a job in 4 or 5 months, welcome to the norm. I mean, it's taking a lot longer to find a job. It's becoming a repetitive activity. When I got out of school, and when a lot of you got out of school, I'm sure that you were taught that you'd find the right company when you get out of school. That's where you're going to be. You're going to get the gold watch, and everything's going to be great. And we watch that whole concept just disappear on us. So we're going to have statistics today show that the average person has 3 careers, and not 3 jobs, careers. They find themselves having 3 totally different things that they do for a living. The average person within those careers has about 8 jobs. So I can't begin to encourage you enough to try to get as much out of this as you possibly can, because the odds are, once you land a job after this, you're probably going to be looking again sooner or later. So get the material down. As I discussed a minute ago, job hunting has moved more and more online, and that's how the employers are looking for you, not by posting jobs so much as looking for your presence online, trying to find you there. Job hunters and employers speak 2 different languages. And the example I used last week is when a job hunter asks for you to tell what kind of skills that you have, you think in terms of, I'm good at analyzing, I'm good at researching, when in reality, they're asking you for what has your experience been. They want to know about your experience. So, the real reason for these sessions is not that there's any real secret. It's about there's hard work. It's just hard work finding a job today. And it can be fun if you make it fun. But this is pretty key. It used to be they would be very, very selective to find the perfect candidate. They'd screen you, and screen you. And he or she that gets hired is not necessarily one today who can do the job best, but rather it's the one who knows the most about how to get hired. And I found this recently when I was on a project with First National Bank, and they asked me to recruit a sales force and train a sales force for them in the southeast part of the country, down in Florida and Tennessee and Georgia. And in that process, this was a few years ago, I was amazed at how many people were much better at interviewing for the job than they were in performing the tests of the job. I mean, it got to where after a few times, I was showing my age on that. I mean, I'd have people that would just interview perfectly. They'd write the right thing, they'd say the right thing, they'd do everything right. And once I had the job, I had a whole different person. But boy, could they interview. So the ideal situation here is to be the very best at finding a job, knowing how to find a job, but also make sure that you can fulfill what it is the employer is looking for.
Would you mind moving that microphone?
Larry, I have a question on that.
Yeah.
How does an employer distinguish, you said somebody that does the interview, they say the right things, but then they're the opposite of what they interviewed, and then they interview somebody that might not look right, but that person can do the job, how do they distinguish?
Well, that's a disconnect. It's a disconnect. As we move further along, I'm constantly talking about looking for jobs a lot like dating. And there are a lot of books on this subject that compare it to dating. It's a common theme that they use. I mean, you meet somebody and you think you'd like to go out with them and you think you might be a match, and the first couple of dates everyone's on their best behavior, and all of a sudden you find out that the person that you ask out is not the person that you met. It's the same thing in looking for a job. And companies have got better. They'll do testing. They'll do a lot of other things now to screen you in once you've done your work and gotten their attention. Then they'll get into the nitty-gritty. The good ones will get into the nitty-gritty of verifying your skills, checking your references. You'll be surprised how many companies, big companies, that talk about references, list your references. They don't check your references. Yes?
Can I just clarify this answer to that question?
Sure.
I just want to answer this question clearly. To remedy that situation, now they are using behavioral questions. And that is, for example, your ability, your experience when you have these questions. Not only that you can well writing or answering the interview, they kind of get your background and how you really react in a situation if you are in a job. Is that a bit clear? Yeah.
Most employers hunt for job hunters different than job hunters hunt for them. And this is the way that most employees still search for jobs. And to the right of that is how the typical employer searches for people. So I cannot, every time I come to one of these meetings as a guest speaker, and I usually just say, okay, what do we want to talk about tonight? Because I have no idea what the other speakers have been talking about. It's just whatever the speaker's topic is, and Mike tries to rotate those appropriately or how they fit. But I'll come in and say, what do you want to talk about? And everyone wants to talk about the resume. And the resume, you need it. It's important. We are going to talk about it, I promise. It's going to be on the back end of this. But the resume used to be your introduction, and your resume is now, really your resume shouldn't reach them until you are walking in for the interview and hand it to them. That's the big difference. Now sometimes they'll say, send your resume, you'll fill out something online. And it's important to have your resume put together properly, but most importantly, it's really an outline for the interview process. We still look for ads online, we look at newspapers, and I can only tell you that the Omaha World Herald and all of the other papers wish that you were finding more jobs in there, because that business has pretty well gone away from them. If you look in the paper outside of, you see a lot of healthcare, you see a lot of education. That's about it. The rest of it, if you look under sales, 90% of the sales jobs are all working for the Omaha World Herald. Trying to get more people to advertise and post their jobs. So, anyway, the employer, there are a couple of things that are important to understand about the employer. They're being very selective, but more importantly, they're scared that they're going to hire the wrong person. And you're going in there hoping they accept you, and they're having you come before them hoping you're the right person. And preparation is the only way you're going to be able to be that right person, because they have a lot of tactics that can derail you. So they are as nervous about hiring the right person as you are getting the offer if that's the job you want. And keep that in mind whenever you have an opportunity to talk to somebody. So what does that mean? Number 2, typical employer search, proof. They want you to prove that you can do the job. They want proof. They want hard facts, and we'll get into that later. Using a best friend, that's where they have employees bring people in, recommend somebody, that type of thing. Employment agency is kind of interesting. There's 3 on the employee search and 4 on the employer search. But employment agencies are still a very, very great way to find a job. Much better than it was 8 years ago, as a matter of fact. And is one of the fastest growing industries in the country right now. And then, they eventually might post some things, and the bottom thing that they want to see is a resume. So where does that leave the resume? It's hard to hide anymore with everything that's going on. Now we're going to talk about some advanced job hunting skills. And with that, I'd like to ask the question again, I need a volunteer. What kind of preparation do you go through for looking for a job? Is there anyone that would like to volunteer before I just call someone, point at someone?
Sales and marketing.
Sales and marketing.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there any particular field that you're looking in?
Mostly technical, so if it's got little ones and zeros, I'm happy.
What about you? You were talking about sales. What kind of sales job are you looking for?
Probably what I'd call a team leader.
Yes. What are the skills that you most love to use? And you need to write it down. You need to think about it. You need to make a note to yourself. What are the skills you most love to use? Where would you like to use those skills? I mean, where, at work. But what kind of work? What kind of environment? And the how is, how do you go about finding those places? Now, we just heard one example. I know about a sales job, and so I called people that I know might work there. They can help me out. But the point is, you need to abandon that typical job hunt. You can't just keep looking online. You can't just, if you've been looking for more than 9 or 10 months and you really haven't had an interview, you're definitely doing something wrong. So it's time to kick up your game. for them now. I want you to find them. So not only do you need to figure out what you want to be when you grow up, you need to figure out who you want to be it with. The real question is, who are you anyway? Just, I mean, who are you? Do you really know who you are? I can sell. I want to do administrative work. I'm a marketing expert. I'm great at IT. I want to be in IT. Do you? You got to take an inventory. Do you really want to do that, or do you want to do that, or are you saying you want to do that because that's all you've ever done? If that's all you've ever done and you love doing it, keep doing it. But you need to be totally focused on your job hunt, and that takes a lot of preparation. I work with, if you go on our site, once you become a member, I offer a couple of hours of free consultation one-on-one. And I'm always amazed, usually before I meet with someone to make their 2 hours, it's not just a token thing. I want everyone to get something out of it. So I usually give them an assignment. And I ask them to do 2 or 3 things that if they sit down and think about it, it'll take them maybe an hour. And that means that during our 2 hours, we can cover 4 or 5 hours worth of material versus covering about a half hour's worth of material if they don't do the assignment. And I can tell you that about 60% of the people I meet with are not prepared. And if I see some talent there, if something just tells me that somebody's got a lot of talent and they just aren't working on it right now, I'll give them one more meeting and I'll give them another assignment for free. And if they're not prepared on that one, I'm done. Now, the difference between that and the people that I attract through my business is that the people I attract through my business, I charge $120 an hour. Guess what? Probably 70% of them are prepared. But they're seeking the same information. But I still have 30% that aren't prepared. And eventually, I'm at an age, I'm at a point in my life, I've talked to a couple of people here before we started, they're talking about, I no longer want to do this anymore. I want to start having fun. And I'm kind of at that point in my life. And whether I do it for free, whether I charge you $100 an hour, whether I charge you $300 an hour, the turn on for me, the hot part of this whole thing for me, the excitement for me, is seeing it work. Seeing you taking the material, using it, and getting a job. That is exciting. That's what trips my trigger. There are some people that are, when they're paying the full ride, just go and sit and have coffee with them, sit around and visit for an hour, give them an invoice, and until I get tired or have other things to do. If I get busy, I let them go. I mean, it's amazing. I had a couple of attorneys where I've just said, I'm not going to work with you anymore. And they're paying me $150 an hour. I said, I'm sorry, you're fired. You're fired. You're fired as my customer. Looking for a job takes a lot of work. I got a kick out of, a couple of people that said, this stuff is too basic, it's too common sense. And that's what my son said to me when he got laid off about 2 years ago. And he's an IT guy in Seattle, and I immediately flew out there with him, and I sit down with him for a week. And he's a 180 from me. He's IT, I'm sales and marketing. He's much more right brain, much more conservative, introverted. And I went through all of this material, and he says, wow, you get paid for that? No kidding. That's, it's common sense. So a week later, I got home, I call him up, and how's the search going? Well, Dad, you know, it's common sense. I mean, it's really common sense. It's just really hard to do. I mean, it is really hard to do. And most of this stuff that I'm gonna give you isn't that complicated. It's gonna be, a lot of it's gonna be so simple, you say, sure, it makes sense, and you're not gonna do it. It makes so much sense, you're not gonna do it. But you have to be totally focused on your job hunt. We got a guy in this room that I am so pleased to see here. Bob Shapp sitting over here in the blue shirt at the table with 3 over there. I met him several years ago. He was looking for a job. His wife moved up here, and he gave up a great job in St. Louis and was looking for whatever he could find here. He didn't care. He just wanted to be with her and support her. And we started telling him through this group about the different things he had to do and needed to do. And I got to tell you, I couldn't go anywhere in this town that represented networking or a job opportunity that he wasn't there. I mean, it was like I had a shadow. I mean, the guy really worked it. He found a job. I kidded him when he walked in and said I was going to ask him to speak tonight, which I'm not going to do, but I am going to have him speak to you sometime in the next couple of weeks. But the thing is, a lot of you have been out there looking for a long time, and if your search isn't working, it's your hunt. It is not the job market. I'm going to tell you right now, it's not the job market. You're not doing the right things. You need to sit down and take your own inventory. If you've ever been to an AA meeting, all I talk about is take your own personal inventory. And the same is true on your job. You need to take your inventory. You need to know what it is you have. Discover the hot things about you and not the market. That's the first thing you have to do before you start calling around, looking online, waiting for people to call you, reaching out. You need to find out who you are. And I'm sure most people say, wow, that's common sense. Why am I sitting here for that? I already said you were going to say that. But the point is, we really don't know ourselves. We go to work every day. We have a title. We do the same job every day. The longer we do it, the more we know about the job. It gets like breathing. Have we ever taken a list? Have any of you ever taken a list about all the things you do, other than your job description? Big difference. As I said, this is a blessing.
Wait a minute.
Unemployment is an interruption that provides an opportunity, and that's where all of you are now. And depending on how well you take this material and work with it, determine how great the next job's going to be. I like this saying. I discovered it. It's kind of appropriate for the last couple of weeks. The major problem of life is learning how to handle the costly interruptions. The door that slammed shut, the plans that got sidetracked, the marriage that failed, or that lovely poem that didn't get written because somebody knocked on the door. Martin Luther King. You know, there's a lot of opportunity out there, but you've got to be ready when it knocks. You've got to follow through on it. So, just who are you? I'm a person that has been in sales all my life. I'm a person that has been in sales management. I'm a person that has done a lot of startup companies. I am skilled at doing this or that. I know a lot about what? What do you know a lot about? Don't do your job description. What do you know a lot about? If you're a mom and you have a couple of kids, you know a lot about time management if you don't need it on the job. You know about scheduling. And I work with people getting back in, women getting back into the job market all the time as their kids grow. And they say, I have no skills, I've been out of the market. What? You know, most jobs pale by comparison to what a good mom goes through in managing those kids. So there's a lot of skill there. You know, and I'm unusual in this. I've had this experience. I'm very unusual in this or that. But the point is, who are you? You need to know that. You need to write it. You need to write it. You need to put everything down that you know about yourself on one piece of paper. And that includes your knowledge, what you've been doing, your field of interest. You need to get on top of that. Who do I like to work with? What kind of people do I like to work with? What is it that I can do and love to do? Not that job that Jeff's talking about where gals walking at the mall and working 60 hours a week and not getting any overtime and being taken advantage of. You know, a lot of you want to probably, you're just thinking, well, I'm going to repeat that because that's what I've been doing. No, this is a chance to probably think about it. You know, what can I do and love to do? My favorite working conditions. Do I like to work at home? My preferred salary or level of responsibility. I've already heard 3 or 4 people tonight that talk directly to this very thing. My preferred places to live. Great time to relocate. This is a good time to relocate. Unless you really have a strong network here, if you're free, the kids are grown, you're at a point in life when you relocate, you might think about that. Or it may be as simple as where do you want to work here in the city? What is your goal? What is your purpose in life? What is your mission in life? Those are all things to think about. Probably haven't given a lot of thought to that as you worry about where your next job's going to be. So the first thing I mentioned was I gave you 7 steps, 7 sides to who you are. The first one is your fields of interest and knowledge, and that's where you take an inventory of your skills, your knowledge, and your experiences. We were talking about that resume that pops. And depending on what it is you want to do, if you're thinking you want to do something a little bit different than what you've been doing, then you go heavy on transferable skills up there. You take all of those skills that do not bind you to a specific occupation. You look at what you did on your previous job. What did you like about that job? What did you hate about that job? Not just the immediate job, but the jobs before then. What was good? What was bad? What do you like to do outside of work? Some of us can't remember anymore. You know, I remember grade school, high school, even college. I had all these plans of things I wanted to do and wanted to be. And then somebody offers you a job and that's what you do. And it may or may not have had anything to do with what you thought you wanted to do. That job started defining you, and that was your area of expertise. But it wasn't what you set out to do. So you need to look at what are the things outside of work, what are the interests that you had? What are some careers and industries that are interest to you? Sales and agriculture, maybe. But you're in sales. Sales is sales. If you limit your search to just agriculture, you're hurting yourself. Selling is selling. Think about your bright ideas. Think about your great ideas. Think about some of the cool thoughts, some of the cool things that you've done with companies in the past that you really didn't get to go forward with an idea or something that you had. Those are all things that you need to do in your inventory.
I have a dumb question.
Yeah,
I feel so numb that I don't know anymore what's my interest outside of work, and I don't feel like I have any bright ideas. I feel like all my creativity is gone.
okay. That's exactly why you need to do this exercise. That's exactly why you need to sit down with your best girlfriend or guy friend or significant other and have a conversation about what they see in you, where your strengths are. Ask your kids, ask your family, what am I good at? Ask your friends at church, what am I good at? What could you see me doing?
Ask your former coworkers. I have to admit that that happened to me once after I was laid off originally. And they came up with all sorts of ideas I never thought of. Because they saw the skill in me that I didn't probably even think I had.
That's
Yeah.
that's the problem I have where I'm at. They tell me I'm good at certain things, but they expect me to do things that I've never done, and that's where I'm sort of struggling with.
But you don't, that's why this is a painful exercise, actually. As my son says, simple, makes sense, doesn't sound difficult, till you sit down and try to do it.
Yeah.
I'll tell you another thing that's tough for everyone to do when I go to meet them. I tell you, I give them assignments, the first thing I ask them to do is write down all their transferable skills. Drives them crazy. They all write down hard skills, they don't know what a transferable skill is.
So basically, you might write down something, realize, oh, I can do that, not really realize until you start inventorying yourself, you'll find things
That's
about yourself.
exactly why you're doing this.
Yeah,
You're all looking for a job. You don't know what you don't know what the product is. You're the product. You're what you're selling. Half of you don't know what the product is.
making sense.
Did you have a question?
Well, I feel like I have the opposite. Like, I'm good at generating ideas and doing an inventory of my skills and all that. So I have it all on a piece of paper, and my spiritual gifts as well. And want to get into a new industry, no idea how to put that into a picture of.
We're going to take you there on that one. We're going to take you there on that one.
Awesome. I'm excited.
Here's a fun one. I'll bet no one's thought about. Yeah.
Larry, I think one of the things is that we're kind of technology behind just a tad. I'm going to say for myself, I did all the softwares and everything. If you're out of the market for computer, doing the computer work that you used to do, and then now there's a new version, I think at some point you're kind of apprehensive of looking that up. Most of the information, if you want to know a little bit of yourself, is to go on YouTube and just do a search on YouTube of how to do a personal inventory. What are your transferable skills? Just use the technology that these young kids are using all the time.
Ah, but you're talking about IT, right?
No, I'm talking about using the computer as
Yes.
like you're doing a Google search, just use it on a YouTube search. Right.
Right.
Well, there's a variety of consulting companies out there, like, I think Gallup has one called StrengthsFinder.
Yes. I do. Yeah.
It's a great one. Most people have been exposed to disc also.
Any of those.
What do you want to work with? Never had that choice before, did you? But by golly, you have it now. It's another thing you can think about. Who do you want to work with? Usually that works like a resume does. If you use a resume to screen you out, the kind of people you want to work with are usually, the first thing you can come up with is you know who you don't want to work with. Have you ever had a job and you got somebody sitting next to you and they're just are energy drainers? They just sap. I mean, they just take every bit of energy right out of you. We probably all had bosses like that.
Yeah.
You know, I want to be around a high energy person. That's the great thing about being in sales. If the company does a good job of hiring consistency in sales and marketing, we have a tendency to be all on the same page. A lot of energy. But you need to think about that. What's the environment I want to work in? And you need to think about the people you've worked with. Jeff just said that. Who have you worked with? What did you like? What people did you like? What people didn't you like? And why? You know, who were the people that just drove you nuts?
No.
Don't want to work with them. And then look at those jobs that you liked and why did you like them? I'll bet part of it was because you liked the people you were working with. And what was it about them? It was an attitude at work. Some people want the whole relationship to stay at work. Others look at it as not only work, but a social network. Just as many people don't want it to be a social network. They want to have a good time at work, and they want to have good friends at work and a good team, but they want to leave that environment and go into something different. So you have to take an inventory on that. Also, what are your people skills? We got IT people in here, I'm sure we've got administrative people, we have people who have done research. You know, do you like being around people? Do you like communicating with people? Then you need a job that supports it. Nothing could be worse, no matter how good you are with technology, how good you are in terms of doing research, no matter how much you enjoy it. If you also like camaraderie and having relationships with people, it's probably not going to happen there. You know, look at your skills. And your skills can be just what I was talking about, technology, but it can also be working with things. You're somebody that is a mechanic. You like to build houses, whatever it is. But you have to think about it, and again, what kind of work environment do you really want to be in? The next thing I talked about earlier was, what can I do and love to do? What do you like to do?
Work with people.
Work with people. Work with people, what do you love to do? Job-wise.
I like connecting with people and connecting people with people and networking and promotions and encouraging and inspiring, promoting.
Okay. Anyone else?
Challenging. I
Challenging?
want something that I can learn from and grow. And pranks
Okay.
are,
I'm going to give you some examples, and these are the things that get us in trouble on our resumes. What I can do and love to do, first of all, bad examples is I'm adaptive, I'm charismatic, I'm reliable, I'm perceptive, I'm discreet. Those are all traits. Good examples are you're innovative, you can manipulate. A lot of people look at that word as being a bad word, but it's a good word. You need to manipulate a situation all the time, especially if you're in management. Or if you've got a bad boss. You need to be able to bring them around so that you're on a common ground. That's manipulating. You're good at analyzing, you can classify, you can coach, you can negotiate. Those are all things that describe the things that you like to do. What are your favorite working conditions? Now this is kind of interesting. And to make this thing, because we are getting a little behind now, here are the things, my favorite working conditions. And you need to make up a list of this too. You need to put down the places that you've worked in your life that you really enjoyed working on. That'll help you. What were the working conditions? I've got two really favorite jobs. I've only had one job in my whole life that I really didn't care for. But I've been very fortunate, and it's probably because of my first career move. And I just clicked with the guy I finally ended up being, who was my boss. Interestingly enough, he was a guy that I had recruited out of college several years earlier. And we just clicked, and we had this chemistry. And we really ended up, because of this complementary, we were opposites. But because of this complementary energy that we had between us, we could really put together great sales teams and motivate them. So, you know, from that time on, every job, everything I did after that, I tried to replicate that. And it helped me immensely. I don't know if it was the fact that I just got older, but it never felt quite the same. So I guess it was just the first time made all the difference, but the rest of the time was great. Look about environments, working conditions where you went in all excited and everything just kind of went to hell on you. Because there was no energy. The room, whatever it was, it didn't work. Then take and make up the things that you dislike the most. And then take and make up a list of where you could maximize your working conditions. Working conditions really are not about a good boss. It's nice. But if it's a good company, your boss can't be that bad if it's a well-run company. Good colleagues, fun clients. You know, good space is good place to work, lots of windows. Wow. I'll never forget when I was in the recruiting business, I knew a young lady that they were going to eliminate her job, and she was just absolutely devastated, but I had known that her employer had told me about it because I'd recruited her for them, and they were actually going bankrupt, and they let me know about her, and she called me up crying and said she lost her job, and I had an interview for her that afternoon. And she went in and she got the job, and she called up, and she had a lot of experience, worked in a lot of places. But the first thing she said was, I cannot believe it. I've got a window with a fountain outside with lots of grass. Made a big difference to her, and she didn't even know it. You know, relatively quiet. Some people like quiet. A lot of companies now are going to this bullpen concept where there's a lot of activity. A lot of people get excited with activity, constant activity, overhearing other conversations. That's more in an environment where there's selling going on, or telemarketing. Good lunch breaks. Never think about that, but good lunch breaks are kind of nice. Knowing that you have a good lunch break, time off, time to read, you know. You work through lunch, you're a fool. If they encourage you to work through lunch, they're fools. You need to recharge your battery. If you're doing a good job, you need to recharge your batteries. So to be able to have time and be in an area where there are places to go shopping, places to go walking, a selection of places to eat, that sure makes for a nice environment. And then how about flexibility and work schedule? That's a big part of life today. Flexible work schedule, how nice that is. Ability to work from home. Whole different place for a lot. That's a whole different thing for a lot of us. But being able to, my wife is working for a company where she had never worked for a company like this. And you know, the oldest person there is probably 30 years younger than her. When she's first couple of weeks she was there, she says, God, no one comes to work. Well, they can work at home. They can all have 2 work days at home every week. They're working from home. They love it. So, you need to think about that. How about a preference for salary and responsibility? How much money do you want to make? A lot. 100,000, 200,000. Reality of it is that's really not the case with most people. Sounds good to say, but I've already heard a couple of people here and say, I don't know that salary's that important. I mean, I want to make a salary. I want to feel that it's respectable for what I'm doing. I want to know that it's going to pay the bills. I want to know that it's going to make the financial contribution that I need. But I'm much more excited about what I'm going to be doing. I'm much more excited about being appreciated and how well I'm fulfilled. How about responsibility? You know, I didn't give my credentials, but I work for large corporations. I've done a lot of startup companies, and I moved to Omaha to get into the employment business and do staffing, temporary staffing, contract staffing. That evolved into executive search. And I interviewed with a company about 5 years ago that my company happened to place me at. And they wanted to know, I happened to know the people there, and they said, well, Larry, you could be my boss. Why would I hire you? Because I'm at a place in life where I don't want to be the boss anymore. You know, it's the old story of Leroy doesn't want the ball. I mean, I don't want to be the boss anymore. I want to go out and do the job. I want to train people. I want to hire people. I want to motivate them and make them feel good about themselves. I don't want to be the boss. So you got to think about those things. What do you want to do? A lot of people where I'm consulting them with their career, and they say, I got to have this position, I got to have this position, I just have to have this job. You know, be careful what you ask for. So, think about that. There's one thing you need to know on your salary. One thing you absolutely have to know. What is the financial contribution that you have to make to your household income? You need to know what your costs are. You need to know how much money it's going to take to pay for all of that. And then you need to know what it's going to take to have a little bit extra so you can go on a couple of vacations and take a couple of breaks. And that's what I call your nut. That's the salary, that's the number that you can't work less for. Because it won't be happy. You need to know where your nut is. And be realistic. But you need to do a good inventory on what it costs for you to live. My preferred place to live. That's kind of obvious, I'm not going to go into that much. I moved here from Seattle, Washington, and I got into the staffing business. I just kind of mentioned that. And I don't know if any of you have been to Seattle. Before that, I lived in San Francisco. And our commute was a couple of hours. And I'm talking a commute a few miles away. I mean, it's a couple of hours during rush hour. And I opened my staffing firm at 120th and Pacific. We had a couple of large employers downtown that were working with me. And I was absolutely blown away. People would tell me how desperate they were to work, and then I'd say, okay, I've got an interview for you with ConAgra. Got an interview with you with Union Pacific. Are you kidding me? I don't want to drive all the way down there and all of this traffic. Oh my God. Do you realize it's going to take me 10 or 12 minutes to get there? Sorry, those people didn't, I got tired of them in a hurry.
But then they also have to
And
pay,
some of you are guilty of that right now.
Larry, they also have to pay parking.
No, well, I know you can negotiate parking, I'll get to that too. But anyway, I'll tell you a story. One of my oldest son, when he first came out to visit me after I was here for about a year, we were downtown and he just fell in love with Omaha. He lived in Seattle. And it was about 5:15 and we'd been to the Chamber of Commerce doing something and we're driving home on 80 and he looks at his watch and he says, "When's rush hour?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "When's rush hour?" I said, "This is rush hour. We're going 65 miles an hour. That's as fast as you can go. I mean, what do you want?" So, anyway, the last point here is, what is my goal, my purpose, my mission in life? And this is a very personal thing. But I've worked with some people in this group that have walked away from great jobs because it just conflicted with who they were. And in a couple of cases, I don't know that I totally agreed with them, because companies today have to offer benefits and services that appeal to everyone, no matter what your individual beliefs are. But the point is, you have to know where you stand on that in order to make a good decision as far as your job is concerned. Okay, we just discovered the hot things about you and not the job market. Next, I want to talk about, you have to go after the companies that you want to work for. How many of you have tried to do that? How many of you picked out a company that you want to go to work for? And you've held it to that? How'd it work for you? Did you get it?
I don't know yet, they're still deciding.
Okay.
I haven't put any of my applications or anything out there, just on my list of my target companies that would like to apply.
Good. Anyone else?
I've gotten to know a couple people there, so I've made some connections,
Sure.
and I try to stay in touch. But there's a lot of good companies out there, so don't close your eyes to places that you could have an opportunity to work for because you're waiting for one particular type of job.
Ah, you've already figured out where I'm going with this. Okay, I think when I look at the time here, I think we'll proceed with this next week. What we're going to do, you've done this personal inventory. What you might do between now and next week is work on some of these things we just talked about, in terms of taking an inventory of who you are, what you're doing, what you want to do, what you're capable of doing, because it'll dovetail nicely into this section as we start talking about how to look for companies. How do you look for companies you want to work for if you've not done all of this other stuff? How do you know how big the fishing pond is until you really know what kind of equipment you have to find the fish? So, I want you to, if you'll please, take some time, and then you can ask questions about it. If you come up with some ideas and you're not sure if that's what we were talking about, you can bring those to me. But we'll talk about the jobs. Now I have, let me see where I want to get to. Okay. I'm going to hit this, try to hit this every week just to remind you. There's a reason that we're doing this exercise, and that's because you're probably not going to find a better time to find a job in Omaha than the next couple of years. So you better do your homework, figure out where you want to work. There is a lot going on here. I mentioned this last week, we have 40,000 more jobs today than we did in 2006. That's more jobs not new jobs, more jobs, total jobs, 40,000 more jobs than we did. Unemployed people looking for jobs fell from 71.3% to 69.6%, and of those looking for jobs. And it's primarily because a lot of people, when they got downsized, they were eligible for retirement, so they decided to remove themselves from the market. Retiring baby boomers, the expansion of disability benefits. Just as a reminder, if you've got kids or grandkids, highest unemployment rate is ages 16 to 19. This one's new, I hope you can see that. This is what I was trying to find last week, and they released it to me the next day. This is a survey of 312 Omaha companies. This is current. This is not 2 years ago. This is 2 months ago.
We can't read it.
Can't read it?
No.
I'm going to read it to you. 69% expect sales revenue to increase
Okay?
of 312 companies. 39% on planning and increasing capital investment this year. Means that they're going to expand. This is the two keys. 49% expect staff levels to remain the same. No layoffs. 46% expect to create new positions in 2015. So that means a net increase in jobs again this year, not only in jobs, but in good jobs, new jobs. Okay, we'll get into this. I'll change that color for next week, but I'm going to actually show you, based on the World Herald, day before yesterday,
Okay.
where the jobs are and how many jobs are in those industries. But I can't talk about these industries with you until you do your homework and figure out what your transferable skills are and what it is you want to be when you grow up. You got to know what you can do. You got to know all the different things you can do. You need to get with it. You need to be prepared because there are a lot of jobs out there. Mike?